All right. So hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Pulp Fantasy Podcast. This is a monthly podcast in which I, Brenton Lengel, who is the writer of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, a dark fantasy hit, and After All, Into the Void, which is the first chapter of my fantasy novel that I'm doing with Rogue of Crew Shadows, starts in the afterlife, begins when the main character dies. And then my third issue is actually called NPCs, Myth, Magic, and Retail, and that is co-written by myself and Zac Xeper. And Zac, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey! How's it going? I am Zac Xeper. I'm the co-writer of NPCs, Myth, Magic, and Retail with Brent. I am also the lead singer of Dogpark Dissidents. We are a queer punk rock band out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We just put out a concept album that has another comic book in the album. It's an album and a comic, so listen to it and read it, and catch us on tour in this coming October. Hey, that's me.
Absolutely. And Vas, so Vas, also, you are also a really incredible comic creator. Do you want to introduce yourself very quickly? We met in Ron Martz's writers group. And for those of you who do follow me with Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, Vas has contributed quite a lot of ideas to that series.
Oh, hey, yeah, I'm Vas. And you might pick up from my fiendish accent that I'm Australian. And I am currently working on my own stories and comics adventure, bringing fresh stories to my new venture coming up called Funk Punk Press.
Funk Punk? Well, that's perfect. You're talking with Zac right there. Uh-huh. Yeah, you have some beautiful comics that you've written, actually, Vas. I'm doing the Vas thing here. Jeez.
That's okay.
You can call me
an internet deep cut.
You can call me Zac to just so everyone.
Zac. Well, it's actually great.
We're here on the as yet untitled podcast with Brenton, Zac, and Vase.
Hey, Brenton, nice to see you again. Yes,
I love Brenton Lengel.
Oh man! Oh geez, we do like Dragon Con. They just keep reversing. They'll be replacing an L with an A or reversing the last two L's. Okay, so this is actually not a podcast about. Yeah, this is not a podcast about me mispronouncing things.
Right.
This is a podcast about where I do a deep dive on some fantasy stories that I absolutely love, and it's very big on this one because I'm a dad and I'm driving to cons. We are always doing fantasy series that have a audio version of them out there, either as an audiobook or in this case, we're doing one that is an audio movie. And Vas and Zac, both of you guys have never. So I'll just spill the beans right now. We are doing Elfquest.
If you read the podcast description, then you would know that it's not really a secret.
That's a very good point. All right, so yes, cat's out of the bag apparently. Yeah, we are doing Elfquest. Elfquest by Wendy and Richard Penny. This is a very, very important series to me. It is one of the two series that without it, I would not be doing. I would not be doing comics today. So you can blame them. But it is a very long-running series, just a little over 45 years now at this point. It's been published by Wendy and Richard at Warp Graphics. And it's getting a TV release fairly soon. But before that, I happened to get my hands on a personal recording of the entire Volume 1, which is done as an audio movie. So not only is this Elfquest Volume 1, it's not like just a podcast. It's not just an audiobook. Like there's the whole like 3D sound experience. So it's got some phenomenal cast members on it. Yeah, so I figured, what better way to start off this podcast than by, sharing this with two of my best friends and two comic creators that I really respect. And of course, Elfquest, though we're reviewing the audio movie. This is, as I said, like a long running comic. I first, encountered it like as a preteen in the Chin Library in Northern Virginia, and was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this series exists, and became completely obsessed with it. So and you guys are now in.
We're in.
Yeah. So
I've been fully elf-pilled.
Okay, Elfpilled is a special thing. Maybe we'll call the podcast that.
Sure.
Yeah. So
here we are. Y'all listening to this right now obviously know what the title is, but that we don't know. We're all in the dark here. We don't know what this thing is called.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Edge of my seat. I'm on the literal edge of my seat right now. Y'all can see if you're watching the video version of this. I'm on the edge. I'm falling off.
I'm here with you. I'm just going to go sideways.
Every inch you move brings you one step closer to the edge, and you're about
to break.
Yeah. Actually, this doesn't feel very nice. It's kind of half-assed.
Yeah. So I suppose you guys, neither one of you has ever encountered Elfquest before, correct?
I've heard the name, and that's about it.
I have read it a long time ago, but only the first 5 or so issues.
Okay.
So when I listened to the audiobook, it all came flooding back.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. So, I mean, I guess starting out, like, since, you haven't read the comics in a while, and honestly, I haven't read the comics in a while, though I read them exhaustively when I was younger. And I'm sharing what comics I do have with my son, who is 6 right now. So I guess my first question is, right straight off at the beginning into the story, it begins kind of with a prologue that's not actually in the comics, as far as I know. And because the comics actually start in media res, kind of right when we are first introduced to Cutter and Red Lance and everything. So I'll tell you what, Voss, why don't you set the scene for us, and what is established in this additional opening?
In this additional opening, we're in this world where we have the elves that are existing, and you get to kind of, and I don't want to give away the spoilers or anything like that. I don't know if this is a spoiler cast. We haven't discussed that.
Another possible title.
We kind of have to talk about what happens in the plot, right?
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
People are going to know.
But there is quite a lot that goes on, and we're introduced to this world, and we're introduced to this the elves and what this particular set of elves is about, like the wolf riders and in that particular instance, but also then this leads into the ancient, what they call the ancient history of the humans and the elves. As we get dropped into this particular instance, and I like the narrator of this particular audio movie. I'll call it audio movie. From here,
she did it in a very theatrical voice, like in
very
possible.
Absolutely, and it's a little bit. It feels like a little bit of a callback to some of the Shakespearean things. Where she says we have to go back.
Everybody in this is so Shakespearean,
right? Yeah. She says we have to go back to this ancient event. Like it's like two households, both alike in dignity. Ancient hurt gives rise.
Except the humans are very, very undignified, it turns out.
That's true.
So the elves are the nice, friendly aliens, right? And the humans are just bad. Bad.
Pretty much. I mean, at the beginning, it's so you'll see that becomes a bit more complicated as the story continues. But yeah, so like you guys were talking about spoilers, like the biggest spoiler is like at the beginning of the audio movie, because when you start with Elfquest, you don't really find out that they're aliens until after like book 3. So book 4 actually.
Like how in NPCs you don't find out that elves aren't real until book 5.
I can't wait for that moment.
Right, but that's interesting that the elves are aliens and the humans are pagan xenophobes. Is that
yeah? Because this, of course, takes place on the world of 2 moons, which is like our world, but is most definitely not.
What struck me about understanding this setup of getting to know okay, elves good, humans bad, is just like when I realized that Elfquest came out in the 70s, I'm like, oh, this is when the environmentalist movement was a little baby. And so humans bad? Question mark, exclamation point. And like, and we've got, so the good guys, they name their kids like, River Blossom Tree Song. And the bad guys, they're not like the evil emperor or whatever. They're just humans. They're just guys. They're just people.
That's right.
Like their leader is voiced by the germiest of irons in the entire cast.
Well, that's true. And the outsider is probably called Dave. The other one's like
it's probably just Dave. Dave from the tribe.
I believe it's Sabak. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, do you mean the shaman?
That was just his alias. His actual name is Dave. That's his Elton John moniker, really.
Oh my God. Yeah, so the series is like misanthropic in a very like positive kind of way. Of course, because obviously a human made this, So when you're reading it and you're a human, you're like, oh,
I'm not like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not
all humans.
Not all humans. Okay, yeah.
But then again, I'm the human who, like, when given the opportunity in a role-playing game to pick my, like, what kind of character I'm going to play, I'm like, do they have a furry? No. Do they have a reptile? No. Elf, I guess. So yeah, that's I'm fully with you. Yeah, humans are the most boring RPG race that you can pick anyway. So I get it. I'm on board for humans bad. I'm just like, they're literally just humans. That's got to be a thing. That's got to be because it was the 70s and they just invented Earth Day, and we were still like, as a society, starting to think maybe humans bad.
Yeah, and now in the year of our Lord 2024, we know, yeah, definitely humans bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I will say there is one thing that I was re-listening to this earlier today, to the first part of the audio movie, or if you guys want to get it on like a regular podcasting app, we listened to about the end of episode 2. So I was listening to that and I was thinking, like, it totally makes sense, like, especially in the context that this was written, that Wendy basically had the elves attempt to, integrate with a medieval society. And instead they wound up getting sent back to like the freaking Neolithic era. But what surprised me is that, like, actually we found out since then that like hunter-gatherers are some of the most peaceful groups of humans that exist. So like the caveman savage, I think honestly they probably would have done, if this were real life, they probably would have done better with the Neolithic humans than they would with like a bunch of like medieval people.
Yeah, totally. Like just humans, just bad. Just like there's something in the human DNA in this world where they're bad.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I still also felt, by the way, that like, even though obviously the antagonists here are the humans at the very beginning, there is a bit of that we see. It's more complicated than that. For instance, I think one of the biggest things was, and I'd be very interested to hear how you guys reacted to it, was, Cutter and the Wolf Riders come in. They rescue Red Lance from the humans who are torturing him and are about to ritually kill him. And then he winds up killing one of the humans. And we spend some time with that human's wife crying over him and like his pastor, like turning it into yet another weird political thing. So what was the fact that, we got to see the fallout from what in a lesser story would just be completely ignored. This guy was just a mook, and there are definite consequences for this, like astronomical consequences on the level of the series. So what was your reaction to that? Did you expect to see something like that? Or, did that like get you out of left field?
I mean, when I was first listening to it, I was just kind of vibing with the whole thing. I wasn't really thinking about my expectations. It was interesting because like there's still during this whole sequence, they're still very much like troping the humans up as villains. They're all speaking with snivel voice. Like it struck me. Like, again, these people, they're just humans. They're us. And listening to this reminded me a lot of, I guess, like, you know, when, like, the tragically canceled Netflix Dark Crystal series, where, like, the moments where we, like, got to see things from the Skeksis perspective, where, the creepy reptile creatures have an internal life of their own too, and that, like, it was weird. Like, that's how they're playing it. It's like, these are like, if I didn't know that these were humans, I would have been envisioning lizard people saying these words, and yeah, I love.
Well, that's probably also the phenomenal delivery.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the delivery, phenomenal anywhere. I love complexity in my fantasy. It's just, it's interesting and jarring to be experiencing like the moral complexity of building like both sides of the world and getting into everyone's perspective while still playing up the pulp fantasy tropes of like villains talk like this and the good guys talk like this. We are righteous. And you know, it's like, it's weird, but interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it like that, but it does make a lot of sense because, like, I mean, you know, in the comic, if you guys see this, you know, it's very much sword and sorcery influenced in the art. It's also heavily anime. Like the Elfquest style is a style in on its own. But, you know, even you see the bell bottoms and stuff in some of the art is clearly.
I thought they looked like Bratz dolls.
Oh my God. Yeah. So. But like the humans very much are drawn like very, very rough. Like if you couldn't read a word of it, and like even if you just saw them like as sketches, like you're like, oh, okay, these are bad guys. You know, the musculature is very accentuated in the art. And just like it almost reminds me of like some of that like classic sword and sorcery art that you'd get, but taken in a way that, like, I guess kind of contrasts it directly with like the obscenely cute beauty of the elves. Like, again, if you guys look this up online and you see the elves, like they are aggressively cute. And then when you get to the kids, just like even more so. So, you know, we have, of course, the battle with the humans. I believe it's Tabak is killed. And as a result of that, the humans do the very smart thing of burning down the entire forest.
Okay, so humans are Netanyahu, all right.
No, right. But I think this does play into some of the tropes there, and I think what we do see is that even from the ancient hurt, that there is a, you know, a fear of the unknown that's being manipulated there, and then the death is actually being manipulated again into being able to have this fear response now to go to eliminate the elves from that particular to a point of justifying that they feel under threat, and also just that ignorance, that human fear of the unknown, and everything like that is really played into in those particular instances. And you're right about the elves. These elves are the nature loving elves and that sort of thing. And, you know, Red Lance went in there just trying to hunt some extra game, and he knew he broke the rules, and there was consequences, and there was consequences for everyone because he broke the rules of that avoidance in that particular arena. And then there's that trope well of like, you know, hey, right, you're young, you're careless, you didn't think before you acted, and now you've brought about possibly the entire destruction of your home. And that tenuous stream that comes in there, and then that payback and everything that came in after, and the way that they reacted. But yes, those elves are really cute. They're like like the 70s books at the time that you would read that had elves in them. That they really do hone in those particular tropes as well from there, which makes this like fairy tale like, and possibly does make this very accessible to a younger audience, despite having some very adult themes.
Yeah, there's been several times I've been reading Elfquest to my son, and like I get to a page, I'm just like, oh, can I read this to him? Especially when we get into like book 2, which was where I started. I missed this entire volume that we're doing here. The first time it started at the end of the story, like the very end of Elfquest Volume 1. So, the fire, of course, consumes the forest, and the wolf riders are forced to flee their homes. And one of the other cool things that I loved about this, actually, is because, like, most fantasy being Tolkien oriented is very focused on wolves as the kind of things that, like, orcs would ride. They're usually bad. And the fact that the wolf riders actually live in tune with them, and as we'll find out, actually have wolf's blood in them, it is a level of badass that you kind of are just like, why didn't I think of that? Like, I'm very surprised that it took that long to make the wolves good and cool.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that eventually someone, like this far back, someone decided that actually Puppy's good. What a revelation! What a like galaxy brain moment. What, like, they were back in the 70s realizing, what if humans bad? And then they were like, hold on, wait a second, dog good, dog good, human bad, dog good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
amazing.
I would say,
incredible.
So I will agree with you on that, but I mean, I don't know, maybe Tolkien was a cat guy or something.
Yeah, oh man, I could totally see that. I mean, like, fucking guys like Celador, the most beautiful world. That is a cat person ass thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
That's a very good point. Zach is going to be interpreting all of this through furrydom, and that's one of the reasons I absolutely was like, oh man, I got.
No, I'm not saying Tolkien's persona was a cat. I'm just saying like he was a cat. Like it's cat owners are, I don't know. That's the kind of thing you do. I'm trying to think, what would Tolkien's persona be? I think he'd probably be a pine marten, I want to say, like a little pine marten with like the tiny little circular little glasses. A bespectacled pine marten is how he would describe himself. He would use the word bespectacled, and then I don't know, invent like a new like elvish word to just. He'd probably he would absolutely name his persona like some elvish word that means like very intelligent. I don't know, just like and no one would know what it meant. He'd just be like he wouldn't teach anyone else that part of the elvish language. He'd keep his own secret word that would just be his own special thing to just
named himself.
Right. So some extravagant elfish word that just meant fluffy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So then, kind of we move on from the introduction to the wolves and the wolf riders. We have our inciting incident, which, I guess depending upon how you look at it, it either happened when Red Lance got caught or when Cutter made the decision to kill Tabak. And they found their way to the caverns of the trolls. Now, what were you guys expecting? Because that I want to know the experience once they suddenly introduce trolls.
Well, once they get into the trolls, as soon as they introduce trolls, and it's not going to be good, right? Because this is the trope of the trolls, and the way that they were even portrayed, and we see them. Like one of the trolls, I think, is called like Picky, as in Picky Nose.
Pick nose,
which makes me think
that is for the shape of his nose, not any social habits.
I just hit me that it was that. No, I got that. That was the shape of his nose. It just hit me like, oh, guy picks his nose a lot. No, no. I was always thinking like,
that's exactly where I went with it. I thought maybe there were like some other name trolls who had some very bad social habits, like Scratchy Booty, or
you know what I mean.
like
Listen, if in fact his name was called Pick Nose because he picks his nose, not because of the shape of his nose, I would feel a lot better about that, considering the trolls hoard their wealth. Like we just kind of had our discourse about maybe it was a red flag the whole time when J.K. Rowling made the hook-nosed goblins into the Jewish bankers. Like, can we? Do we really? We gotta, man. Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's this is sort of a long-running pulp fantasy trope of law all the way back in the past is like very, very early on. The hook-nosed goblins or trolls or whatever were the Jews. And it is, I suppose, unfortunate that we're continuing with this, that we're stuck with that. But you know what? We can, as the Jew on this panel, I will give Elfquest a pass. We can just decide that we're not doing that anymore. Just take note. Let's
uncanceled. But
let's make sure we wring our hands. Wring those hands.
There's something that comes out about the trolls, then, isn't it? Though that we've got the humans who are pagan xenophobes. We got the trolls that are a monarchy, right? There's a king, and the king's obviously maintaining power through fear and oppression of the subjects in that particular arena as well. And even when the king decides to be nasty, like, some of his subjects are like, but that's not, you're being nasty, right? In that particular arena. And so you've got this chieftain who's in the elves, who's now in charge of looking after all the elves' welfare, taking every hit personally, trying to make the hard decisions, and trying to now play tough, with the trolls, so that he can see his people through and has no choice, right? No choice. And some interesting things, like when he makes these choices and they find that perhaps they're getting taken by the trolls a little bit, that the rest of the clan stands behind their chieftain, right? As opposed to what could happen under these other, if you like, forms of what do you call it? Communities.
The elves, they very much follow Cutter, and you can see why they would. It's not just because his dad, Bearclaw, was the chief, and they do pass the chieftainship down through bloodlines. And what's amazing about this, by the way, is canonically, Cutter is like 14 at this point.
I can see that.
Yeah, Tree Stump is 500. And you will there's a lot to go with that. So elves, basically, they do mature like really, really quickly. It's interesting, actually, that you made that comparison, Zach, because of two things. One of the things that I noticed they did with the trolls, and you'll see more of this as the story continues, because again, the view you get of the trolls here is definitely, it becomes much more complicated as the story continues. But I always felt like with the trolls, they managed to work in both, like, traditionally trolls or goblins in with like a lot of tropes that apply to dwarves.
Yeah, I was distracted when they first got into the troll cave, and I thought that they were dwarves. I didn't hear them say trolls. And so it took me whoa, they're not dwarves. Which, by the way, fun fact, dwarves in was it in The Hobbit? Yeah, it was in The Hobbit. Dwarves were Tolkien was widely criticized of portraying the dwarves with offensive Jewish stereotypes. And he took that criticism to heart and said, I'm sorry, and then made them this proud warrior race in Lord of the Rings. So, we have me thinking the dwarves, the trolls were dwarves, but no, they're actually different kind of fantasy Jews. Yeah, it all connects.
Yeah. All right, good. Uncanceled.
Uncanceled, but finger has been wagged. Your mother would be very disappointed in you, Elfquest.
All right, so here's my one thing that I noticed as I've come back to this as an adult, because when I was first reading it, and this was, of course, well before Game of Thrones, I was there with Cutter. Like, the whole time he's making every call, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's great. And then, like, as an adult coming back and going back over the confrontation with the trolls, Cutter makes a lot of mistakes. Like, and he kind of gets Ned Starked because he's classic. He's behaving like a classic, like, fantasy protagonist.
Like a 14-year-old.
Yes, a mega 14-year-old. But yeah, you would not expect there to be consequences for killing the Mook. You would not expect, like, the trolls, I mean, they very obviously were going to do what they did. Like, if you are just, the series telegraphed that to you from the very beginning. Like, I think even when they were talking about the traps and, we couldn't have stopped you by now, and you're sitting up there, you're like, oh, there's traps. And then you have that confrontation with Greymon. Now Greymon, King of the Trolls, old, corpulent, very kind of Robert Baratheon, now that I think of it. And Cutter literally comes in there and, tells him, you're going to do this, is eating his food. They have a slight argument about, like, whether the trolls need the elves or the elves need the trolls. And, then it goes to violence once Skywise recognizes the giant magnetic lodestone. And I'll go into this a little bit more, but I really want to get, so once the lodestone was introduced, did you guys notice anything? Did you realize that was going to be as important as it was? Or
I honestly totally forgot about it. So no, I did not realize that this is a thing. All right.
Cool. But yeah, what about
next
you,
episode?
Zach?
Well, the fact is it was called a lodestone, and they obviously connected with it, and there's obviously going to be something with it. So I said, that's going to be important later, and then, and it is. But so, that is, but it's a little, but you started to get the idea as well, like with the elves and how they marry and connect with each other and how they mate and on a soul level, and they're very spiritual in that way, and how they can talk to each other, and communicate on a soul level as well. Right. Yeah. So communicate on the soul level as well. And that becomes very evident, in the next little part as well, that comes through where they really get a chance to bring that all into context.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing how much Elfquest I bet influenced James Cameron's Avatar right now. Like they live in the trees and they talk telepathically. Like, yeah, I think James Cameron read Elfquest.
That's it. Okay, James Cameron, you're canceled. There we go. We're moving it over to him.
No, we don't have to cancel James Cameron for having an influence. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No. I guess
you clearly read this. He was around for it. Probably.
I never made that connection.
The timing works out.
But yeah, the timing does work out. That humans bad.
Humans
Avatar, bad. I feel like there was less nuance in it than Elfquest. But especially like where you guys are in the story. Yeah, I completely. I never made that connection with the Navi. I bet you he really was. Someone contact him. Make him tell us.
You're gonna just trade the lodestone for what was it called? Unobtainium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
we need to break into James Cameron's house, like just like Cutter, make a bad decision, put a sword to his throat, and say,
eat his lunch.
Is Avatar based on Elfquest or Ferngully? Say it. You're gonna tell me. Which one?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Ferngully had some strong Elfquest.
Yeah, it's probably both. It's probably both end, but there's got to be Elfquest in there.
I'd say Elfquest has some of the same influences. I guess it's just modern age. You can't be original. You just have to be fresh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and also like I feel like the direction that Wendy took the elves in was so, like, if you decide you're going to do a series called Elfquest, you're going to make it about elves. Every time, and this is something I actually like to do in my own work, is like I like to zig when people expect me to zag. Anybody who's looking to tell that story, the first thing they're going to think is, oh, we put them in medieval. We put them in some sort of medieval society because that's where the elves are. That's, you know, and then the second thing that they're going to say is like, oh, you know, this is going to be some like great confrontation between the elves and this purely evil force. And you know, and our leader is going to be like this paragon. You know, and every time Wendy came to that thing, she made the choice that it was not obvious to make. And as the series continues, it's going to get more and more evident. And I'm, you know, it's one of the things that even today, like as a writer, when I look at this, I'm like, that is absolutely a brilliant approach. And it makes what could be a very kind of bog standard story into something that's really special. You know, as far as even, you know, putting them on the world of Two Moons. But what I wanted to get into with the Lodestone in particular, because of course Cutter's sitting there, he's eating the mushroom, completely dominating Greymong, quite frankly. Skywise touches the stone, and of course Greymong hits him for this. And Cutter, instead of killing Greymong, because you think he's going to for just a quick second, he knocks that piece off of it. And Skywise gets it, which is awesome. You know, I think that's a wonderful moment, but also Cutter, you're relying on this guy to get you out of the situation that you're in.
Yeah, like it is weird the trajectory of my opinion of Cutter over the course of this whole thing, where like first he shows up, he breaks into the cavern with the tribe and starts like demanding all this stuff of the trolls, and the trolls make this very reasonable argument like help is asked for, not taken. And I'm like, yeah, Cutter, yeah, I get that y'all don't really have a choice here, but like learn some diplomacy. And then we find out that the trolls are hoarding all their wealth and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay, Cutter's an angry leftist. All right, I get it. You know what? He's justified. He's not good at politics, but his heart is in the right place. And that comes up, like Cutter as angry leftist absolutely comes up again when they're sending them out into the leading them to the golden shiny land, which is actually the desert. Because like they take them all the way to the end of the tunnel, and then Cutter very unhelpfully says, hold on, let me make sure these guys don't betray us. With 5 seconds remaining, you don't have a contingency plan. You have nothing helpful to say. You're just like, hold on, these guys are going to betray us. Like you got the Troll King to drop out of the presidential race. Now everybody's super coconut pilled for pick nose, but then you get to the end of the tunnel and you go on Twitter and you say, hold on, you guys, she's still a cop. I don't have anything helpful to say beyond that. I don't have a plan for what to do about that, but we're all going to get betrayed. And then it happens, and you're right, Cutter, but thanks.
Yeah, thanks. You really should have seen that coming. And I think it kind of goes back to...
We all saw it coming, us in the audience, when the trolls sniveled, like, oh, yeah, it's the promised land. They're like, yeah, everybody saw this coming from a mile away.
Which is so weird because, like, you know, so in like negotiations, you know, like when you're doing like diplomacy, the key is to, you know, basically figure out what the other person wants or needs and align their, align their interests with yours. And the elves and the trolls kind of wanted the same thing. They both wanted to leave. And, you know, honestly, they probably would have continued on like the economic relationship with them, assuming that there was some other tunnel that the trolls could have sent them to. That this betrayal wasn't always going to happen. But I mean, I think Cutter, he is very much his father's son. We will see a bit of Bearclaw before the end of this, and also like just he is very at the beginning of the story. He's very, very tunnel visioned in dealing directly with his tribe and the people that he needs to protect and is responsible for. It's like, as you said, he's very much, he's justified, but he's not quite as empathetic as he needs to be to get through this, what would otherwise be a pretty hairy situation.
Let's keep score here from the beginning of this. So Cutter, he kills Tabak. He is just kind of an asshole to the poor kid that they saved. Then he's an asshole to the trolls who are supposed to help him. And then 5 seconds before they get betrayed, it's like, we're gonna get betrayed, you guys. He's just not. He kind of sucks. I'm not on Team Cutter right now. After Act 1 here. Yeah. How do you feel, Vaz? Are you on Team Cutter or are you?
Well, you have to sort of thinking from a writer perspective. It's very interesting to see where Cutter is, right, and to note where he is right now compared to where you expect him to probably be or maybe at the end of this journey, and for him to have grown in a particular direction. So, correct to say that he is young, and it's great. It is a great moment. He knocks a bit off the lodestone and says, like, "Screw you, we do what we want." Right. It is a little bit of trying to display strength that he probably doesn't really have. He sort of feels backed into a corner and doesn't know how to deal with the situation because of either his inexperience or this situation that they're all in. And this is a very stressful situation, not only for his tribe, but a very stressful situation for him. And so he's trying to play this big game. How he thinks it should be played and how he should put it on, and to actually try to bring back some sort of strength or some sort of show of strength in the situation that he's in as well. But obviously he has no cards to play, right? Mm-hmm. in this particular, and even though he does do a little bit of negotiation, he says it himself. He really does have no choice but to trust where the trolls are taking him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he's totally right. What's very interesting about this is usually in a story where the main character makes as many mistakes at the beginning as Cutter made, they usually do that in a comedy. Usually when it's used in drama, they tend to take at the beginning of, and I guess this just goes back to like Greek theater and tragedy. They at the beginning of dramas, they tend to build up the main character as much as possible, and then have them start making their mistakes 30% of the way through. Honestly, if you were reading this for the first time and you weren't expecting it to be as deep as it is, you would see a lot of these things that he did: the killing of Tabak, the breaking into the trolls, the being a jerk to them the entire way, and then of course, the confrontation with Greymon. So, yeah, I definitely see what you guys mean, specifically about like he is both a very traditional fantasy protagonist and non-traditional at the same time. And it's really, really interesting too, because the story, like, it's very clear that he is making these mistakes. You can tell the story knows he's doing it. So it's almost like Titus Andronicus, like some like the really great Shakespearean tragedies where, they build up Titus and, he is this guy that you really, really like. And then of course, the movie descends into it's Shakespeare's Tarantino period. I guess my feeling is this. Do you think that there was a world in which was there a world where Greymon doesn't send them to die in the tunnel of golden light, or do you think that was just always going to happen?
I think it would have happened eventually, even if there was a little bit of a okay, you can stay in the back room. I still think that was too much for him. That's the impression that I've got. But also, you know, when you see like Cutter making all these mistakes, what's really good about it is that he seems to be a little bit bullheaded, a little bit making these mistakes, and which gives you as a reader a kind of a sense that maybe he's not long for this, or that, you know, gives you that feeling that he's either going to change or die, and he could die, right? So that's part of it as well, where you see him making those mistakes. Like, yeah, I'm not really into you. You know, if you die, that'd be okay. You know, from that point of view, and then there has to be a point where he redeems himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And sort of that, then we move into like the next major movement within the story, which is, of course, the desert. And the desert is that is a tough kind of grueling experience for the elves, but also it's somewhat grueling for the reader, because you can see these characters that you have really come to love and identify with, and like they're going through this massive suffering. Like, I really feel like the hardest thing for me when watching that was the fact that the wolves couldn't be underneath the shade, that they had to endure the desert, and one of them like even died, you know, if I remember right. So
yeah,
I mean, both you're going through a very difficult time for the elves. They're being tested in a way that they never have before, and then like you as the reader, you're also you're sustaining that emotional damage, particularly because, you know, we've been introduced to the wolves at this point. We know that they're not just animals, you know, they're not just dogs, they are companions. I don't know. So when they start out in the desert, like, what were you guys thinking? What was going to happen, basically? What was your major reaction to them getting trapped beyond that wall falling?
I mean, I was thinking that it's very interesting that who the Jews are in this story has shifted, because now they're being punished with 40 years in the desert. I guess the elves are the Jews now. So we just fantasy is just a consistent shifting of who's Jewish throughout, depending on the circumstances. I mean, I obviously, I'm feeling real afraid for the elves now, because these people know nothing but green. They literally they've never seen sand before in their lives. They don't know what a desert is. There's no way, like, this is completely uncharted territory for this entire society. And who is leading them through this trial? Cutter. Great. They're not. Yeah, they're not. I'm terrified for all.
Who else is going to lead them at this point, though? I mean, obviously Tree Stump's the elder, but he doesn't have the charisma of Cutter. And, you know, I feel like Cutter's brashness and his, he kind of is very bull-like almost, in the sense that when he hits an obstacle, just boom, straight through. So I'm not sure
that is what you need in this situation, I guess. So maybe this is Cutter's time to shine. We'll see if he can, you know, handle being nice to anybody for a second. I like that I think is, you know, like raw survivalism. Like if it were just Cutter on his own, he could probably figure it out. But he doesn't really play well with others. So I don't know. I mean, I guess for some reason everybody respects him. So maybe he can just start, like, you know, continue to just be a dick to all the elves in the way that he does, and they'll listen to him and get, you know, figure out how to survive. But yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Like with everything I've seen from him so far, I'm not optimistic.
Okay, so you're not on Team Cutter.
I'm still. Listen, I I need to hear more. I need to continue listening to find out if I'm going to be on Team Cutter. But I think the only way I will get on Team Cutter is if, like Vass, like you said, he gets his comeuppance. He like just finally fails. Yeah, I'll get on Team Cutter after he gets kicked in the ass and redeems himself, because it seems like not dark enough a story for him to just die.
Yeah. Well, do you think, like, I feel like he got his comeuppance. They're in the desert. That's the comeuppance.
Fair. Yeah. All right. So now it's the redeem yourself time. Can you do it?
Yeah. You're at this instance as well where you can. You're at this. You're at this instance as well where, yes, there's a redemption point, but you're also, because of the mistakes he's making, right, and it's been so bad, you could be aware that his redemption could kill him. Right?
Yeah, this is a good point.
That's the thing. His redemption could be the end of him, right? That last final valorous act that has to go through, and right now he's trying to project a strength, and he doesn't want to confront the situation too much because it will undo him. And he knows the only way is forward, and so he pushes forward, and he tries to instill that sort of focus into his party. From that point of view, that there's no room for any doubt. Have to go forward.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. There is towards the end of this audio movie, we are going to get to see a little bit more of Cutter's backstory. And like, watching right now, the tribe is clearly very deferent to him. They're very like on Team Cutter, even though the situation they're in is so difficult. Like
it's his fault.
Really, yeah. But the thing is like, you get to see why that goes on and how that happened. What's really, really interesting is a lot of this, and maybe this is just because I'm a dad at this point, a lot of the mistakes that Cutter makes, I think, feel like he is trying to be his father. To a certain extent, or at least he's trying to lead like his father would lead. I think even, I can't remember if it's in this or later, but like, Bear Claw was like, he wasn't a bad guy or anything. He was a very good chief. They liked him a lot. But like, he was much more of an asshole.
The trolls did not like Bear Claw, and they're like, the trolls make multiple references to like, your dad sucked. We hate your dad. And like, if he is trying to lead like his dad, I see why they hated his dad.
Yeah. Bear Claw, he plays into like, the character of Bear Claw plays very much into like that classic kind of fantasy trickster trope. Like he's almost got like a Loki quality to him. And so like you
so the trolls bear clawed the elves. They gave him a little taste of the daddy's medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I don't think Bear Claw never was like mean spirited with them. He did. You find out in like the second book. This is after this, that like Bear Claw was able to figure out that the trolls existed because someone was stealing the dream berries off their bushes. And so he wound up like just like sitting, like waiting until like a hand comes up out of the ground and then bang, grabs it. And that's first contact.
All right. So Bear Claw was I don't know if Risa, I don't know if any of y'all watched Jeremy Clarkson's farm show, where it's just he got a deal with Amazon, and now he's just like basically making a TV show about enjoying his retirement. He farms now. There was like an entire episode where he was just obsessively like staking out the like a hole in his hen house or something to just like laser focused on determining that it was in fact a mink and not a fox. So I think Bear Claw is just a retired Jeremy Clarkson who is done driving cars and wants to work on a farm. and still says like, you know, vaguely problematic things a lot of the time, but he's old now, so we give him a pass.
We give him okay. Bear Claw's in much better shape than Jeremy Clarkson. I'll just say that. So, where do you guys feel like the story is going to go from here?
Man, well, you know, you know, like them getting out of the desert, they could end up anywhere. It's so okay. So the inciting incident of this whole thing is that the humans are pursuing them. So like, are the humans, are they gonna come to the desert and try to kill the elves in the desert? Like, damn, they're humans bad.
Oh man. Okay. I'm not going to say anything because everyone who has read this at this point is I will say what you are saying is something that of consequence, but also it's not going to happen the way you think it will. What about you, Vas?
Right. So if this was following sort of a line, for me, they're seeking shelter, they're seeking sanctuary at some particular point, and then they're going to somehow find it, but there's going to be a complication, and it could be that the humans come back to do that, or there's some sort of hidden alliance that we're not aware of, or there's some sort of third party, that fourth party that we've yet to meet. Between that's going to help put some contrast to what's been going on now. So that's where I think it's going. They've got to find some sort of sanctuary. They're going to take a little breath, or they're going to have to fight for the sanctuary. I don't know, but there's some complication.
Awesome.
I feel like it would make more sense for it to be some kind of third or fourth party, not the humans who accost them in the desert. Like that just I don't know how the humans would have figured out where they are, and also like they've left the forest. Why are they a problem anymore? The demons are gone. You don't need to be chasing them. So like it would make more sense to me if they end up running into like serpent people or something or whatever, and then get chased out of the desert. Like, I don't know. I think the elves are going to find an oasis. They're going to discover what a palm tree is. And then they'll get chased away by genie snakes or whatever. And somehow the humans are going to come back up, but it would be weird if they came into the desert. That would be weird.
That is, I agree that there's a sanctuary, and there's some other party that comes in at this point that's going to give a context to the larger world.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think it is frying pan fire, frying pan fire, and then more fire. I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, the fire of the sun at this point. Yeah, so I guess at this point, like, I really want to keep talking about the rest of the story because I'm super excited about this.
So I guess we should listen to it, huh?
Yeah. So we could go and do the next. Right now, I would say overall impressions about the story. We'll do Vas and then Zach.
All right. So overall impression about the story. I think that from the time it was released, I think it's actually quite groundbreaking for the time it was written. I think that a lot of these tropes are kind of considered fresh even just recently. From there. I think that originality is quite good there. And I think that from the graphic novel, the cuteness of the actual elves and the spiritualness of those particular elves also kind of reflects the 70s a little bit. By a lot of the books and what people typically thought elves were like at that particular time. And so it's an interesting dynamic to have that cuteness and the wolves thrown in against this very interesting political backdrop and this quest that they're on.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting for a story called Elfquest. The major conflict in this is a hairy political situation.
It's true, and well, as we can see, they're on a quest.
Yeah. Well, the quest has not quite yet begun, but we will also get into that. Zach, what are you feeling? Overall impressions of the story?
Yeah, I mean, my overall impression, first of all, I did not know until we started recording this podcast right now that this story was actually a literal straight adaptation of the original story from the 70s. So that didn't factor into my impression. I was approaching it as like, oh, I guess they wrote a Elfquest for the 2020s. Story-wise, it felt like a very interesting combination of typical pulp fantasy tropes subverted with a lot of these like adding political complexity, making the villains just kind of be humans, and all of these other like they're sort of like subtle interesting things that you kind of have to like. The more I think about this, the more interesting it's getting. It's like initially listening to it, I'm like, yeah, this is pulp fantasy. It's pretty well done pulp fantasy. And I thought like specifically the aesthetics of the audio production, it made me feel, I felt like I was listening to a video game, if that made sense. Like a lot of the aesthetics and sonic choices and direction that I think that they gave these voice actors reminded me a lot of the way stories are told in video games, especially I think with the cadence of the narrator cutting in and out very much at the beginning. It felt like these were the opening cutscenes of a game, just like that. So like, I don't know. Yeah, that's what aesthetically struck me, and it gave me a lot of sense of nostalgia of like, oh, this reminds me of this is the sounds that would be coming through my speakers when I was 14 and sitting in my basement in front of the big CRT monitor playing, like, I don't know, Dungeon Siege or whatever. So yeah, I mean, first impression is like cool throwback pulp fantasy, and then you think about it more and you start to kind of pick up on like, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So that's kind of cool. I like I like being able to sit with this and get more and more Elfpilled.
Elfpilled is now officially a thing, by the way. Listeners, make that a thing.
Yeah. Do I need to say hashtag Elfpilled, or is it now cringe in the year 2024 to hashtag everything? Probably, yeah. Twitter is dying. We don't hashtag anymore.
The culture at this point is everything except 5 minutes. Everything more than 5 minutes ago is now cringe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what's really interesting also when we talked about the tropes, this so overall impressions of this, looking at it, first, as a fan, and then, as a professional screenwriter and comic creator. One of the things that I found, so there's a thing that we have when in screenplays, Jacob Kruger, the guy who runs Jacob Kruger Studios, he's an Emmy Award-winning screenwriter. He was one of the people that taught me. Voss, you obviously we met through that, and that he was the one who introduced us to Ron. There's a thing that they called, I think it was actually George Straighton, who was the writer for Xena and He was one of the writers for Xena and Hercules. He introduced the Acer to the world of Xena. He mentioned that there's this thing called feeding the genre beast. And essentially, so think of it like a Disney movie. When you look at a Disney movie, it promises a particular emotional experience. and you know that there are things that are going to be in the Disney movie, that if they're not there, your audience is going to get pissed off. He compares it, look at Frozen, for instance. We know that it's a Disney movie. There must be a princess. And there must be a kid.
All the villagers must sing.
Yeah, exactly. So oftentimes, like when you're telling a story and you're trying to be unique with it, if you are working within a certain genre, you have to kind of feed that a little bit one way or the other. You have to give things that people are somewhat familiar with, because the common touchstone is something that the series itself really promises from the beginning. And so like a lot of times when people feel like really frustrated after seeing a movie, like they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be so good and it's terrible. It's oftentimes because they underfed the genre beast. Now you don't want to do the other thing where you just do everything, and suddenly your last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. But I think that Elfquest does a very, very good job of feeding that beast in such a way that it feels both familiar and completely novel at the same time. And thinking of it as 12-year-old me discovering this in the library, like I cannot think of like a better graphic novel to have run into at that point in my life. And now I'm 41. I got a family of my own, and we're going through it, and my son's going to grow up reading Elfquest, and hopefully, in fact, we listened to the entire thing of the audio movie like on the way to visit my parents over Juneteenth. So yeah, my son Gavin, he's very Elfpilled.
Hell yeah. Gotta start him young.
Great. So so I'm very excited about you guys seeing this. I'm really excited as to where the podcast is going to go and how incredible the story is going to be. This is part 1 of what will probably be a 4-part series of podcasts before we move on to the next one. Now, I did want to let everybody know, one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because I am looking for a way to get the comics from Snow White Zombie, from Darude, from NPCs, Myth, Magic, and Retail. I'm looking for a way to get those comics out faster. And so one of the things that I wanted to do with this podcast is use it to promote the Patreon. Now, please, like, comment, subscribe, give us a great review on iTunes or YouTube or whatever.
Wherever you get your podcast.
Wherever fine pods are cast.
Whatever the platforms are these days. The Spotify, Yo2, Amazon, Audible.
So what I recommend, if people want to help out with this, go to the Patreon. It's going to be linked in the description. There's a couple of different levels, but one of the things that absolutely everyone is going to get if you give to the Patreon, the first thing is any of your orders for Snow White Zombie, Darude, NPCs, any other series that I do, you will get your Kickstarter rewards sent first, no matter how complicated they are. And that's because you are contributing to a more regular source of funding that I can use to really kick the series that I'm working on into high gear. And, absolutely, I'm really excited to see where NPCs is going to go with Zac, and that's another reason why I'm happy to have him on here.
Hello.
Yeah.
I also write comic book.
Yes, yeah. What I would say is go in, give the Patreon, and then the other thing is you will be able to choose from a list, but you will be able to vote on what the next story that we review is. Once we're done with the Elfquest audio movie, if you want to see us do Vampire Hunter D, if you want to see Conan, anything, hell, we could even do a Sandman if you need to, though that would be pretty epic. Just join the community, get access to the Discord, you get a chance to vote on what the next story is going to be, and you get your comics first. And that's just a thank you from me to you. Zac, Voss, you guys got anything to plug?
As I said at the beginning, I am in Dogpark Dissidents. We are a punk rock band, and we just put out a concept album comic book combination called Magnificent Bastards. You can stream it on Spotify. If you go to dogparkdissidents.com, you can read the comic book alongside each of the tracks that the comic pages correspond to. If you buy it on Bandcamp, you get a download of the comic book. And once we are able to get vinyl record pre-orders open, the comic book is going to be like inside of the vinyl jacket. It's like you open it, and there's a record, and the liner notes are the comic with the lyrics. The lyrics are next to the comic pages. It's all very integrated. So yeah, that's check that out. Listen to the soundtrack for a story about gay supervillains who are trying to kill all the oil executives before the planet dies.
Hey, because humans bad.
No. We explicitly we address that, and there's the song about how not all we are
hashtag not all
human. Like they're like 1,000 fucking bad humans, and the rest of them are good, and we're just stuck with them. Yeah, it's a song that's called "We" in quotation marks. It's track 6. It's great. Listen to it. It's a ska song.
Yeah, I will say what I've heard of Dogpark Dissidents, like we were friends before you were a musician. Like, I mean, you were still a musician, but before you had the band, I was honestly shocked at like how incredibly good you guys are, particularly the song Class Struggle, which I literally got pulled over by the cops while streaming. Oh, geez. And like, it's some of the most interesting punk music you're going to have. And honestly, like, it sounds great. Like, I listened to the band initially because I'm like, oh, this is Zac. And then I'm just like, oh, this is really good. Which just, it blew my mind. Same thing with the comic, and our two brains are making NPCs at this point, which I'm really excited about. Now, Vas, oh God.
Yeah. We'll correct that now. Right? It's my name. Vas is short for Vasilios Christos Pelikanos. You killed my father, prepare to die, right? So it's Vasilios, so it's Vas. So for sure, I'm totally going to check out Dogpark Dissidents. I love the concept that you're putting down for sure, and it's right up my alley. That's for sure. So I'm going to check that out. So after this, I don't have any social media or anything to point you to from my work just yet, but hopefully by the time we get to the next podcast, I always said dogcast. I don't know why. Podcast.
We're on all the things.
I just see
everybody is becoming
coming in and out.
Wolf riders, puppy dogs, woof.
That's it. Puppies. I've got puppies on the brain now.
Elfpilled, Dogpilled.
Wolf.
Next time we get.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I gotta say, I think I'm just gonna name this Elfpilled. Like, I think that's the perfect name for this episode.
Yeah. Quest for the Elfpill.
I'm sorry.
Quest for the Elfpill.
Quest for the Elfpill. They are not looking for an elf pill. I suppose the closest thing to the elf pill might actually be the lodestone.
Yeah, is the load? Can you swallow the lodestone?
You probably shouldn't.
Well, what happens? Do you have the worst trip of your life?
I mean, you're eating a magnet that came from space.
Sounds great. I mean, you know what else came from space? Apparently the elves. So they can probably process it fine.
That was just that is literally like the biggest spoiler in the whole series, and we're just getting that out of the way right now.
But yeah, I mean, if you eat it, maybe you always know where north is. I don't know.
Yeah. And also, honestly, the story's been around as long as it has. Like, you're kind of it's like, can you?
Darth Vader is his dad.
Snape kills Dumbledore. So guys, please check it out. If you guys are interested in picking up any of my work, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which just recently funded its fifth issue. and it has its very first graphic novel coming out. And we actually have a variant cover that is inspired by Elfquest Volume 2, which was the very first one that I read. Yeah. And so between Wendy Pinney and Bill Watterson, those are my two biggest artistic influences and the reason that I am doing comics today.
Very nice.
Yeah, so check that out if you want to. You can give to the Patreon. You could back me on Kickstarter. We're going to have NPCs #1 out very soon. We've got Darude #3 is about to launch, which I'm really excited about. And then we're following that up with Snow White Zombie #6. And this is, I'm really excited about this, we're going to be doing a Snow White Zombie tarot deck. So not just like the major arcana. I'm going to have an entire Snow White Zombie tarot cards.
You can get a 2 of clubs or swords, whatever. What are the suits? Wands, cups.
Wands, swords, cups, and the other one's like either coins or pentacles.
So are you doing coins or pentacles is the real question. I'm
doing coins.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I would have thought that you'd go full spooky. But
no. You know, but this is the thing. It's Snow White Zombie, and we're releasing like actual like challenge coins for Snow White Zombie, like some really good ones.
Okay. All right, so you gotta tie in the merchandise.
Yeah, well, and also it's just easier to work in. I mean, I guess I do have a giant upside down pentacle in issue 4.
Yeah, I think maybe you should do pentacles.
Well, we'll see. I will have to change that. It's like, how do you just throw a whole bunch of pentacles into like a setting? Okay, well, now we're officially talking about tarot. So yeah, guys, thank you very much, and we will talk next week. And I can't wait to hear you, because it's going to bring us up to about 50% in the story, and you know, a lot of more of this stuff is going to be coming together. So thank you, and listener, thank you very much. Back me on Kickstarter, give to the Patreon. That's why I can keep doing all these things, like, share, comment, do all the internet stuff. Yeah, but bye.